All right. And today I'm privileged to be visiting with an old friend, Cal Israel.
Yes.
Me and you go way back. I remember you were what part of George O'Leary's first recruiting class
Hmm.
at UCF. What class of 2004?
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
talking to you that year, and I think I swung over University High School when you made your
You did.
when you signed your letter of intent, and you went
Yeah.
on to have a fantastic UCF career. And we'll always have a place in UCF. Laura, you were the starting quarterback of UCF's first conference championship team in
Yeah.
2007. So thanks for joining with me today, Kyle.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. It was nice to hear some of those memories right there. It's fleeting quickly, but anytime I followed you forever, as you know.
Yeah,
So you're my link while I'm overseas.
I appreciate it. Actually, I saw you. It kind of I know you're obviously you're. Congratulations on being a new father and
Thank you very
everything. I know
much.
you're living in Germany now. I mean, that's a country
Yeah.
you had a little bit of a linkage to because you played what in the
Yeah.
German football league for a period of time. When was that?
So I played there in the German Football League in 2009, and then I played there again in 2014. So when
Okay.
life happened extremely quickly this last fall, and I found out my fiance and I were pregnant and moving to Berlin, where she's from, I said, I know the culture a little bit. I have some
Yeah.
friends, and it made it a lot easier, that's for sure.
Yeah. And Germany's not the only place you played football. You were in the Russian football league for a
Yep.
little while.
Played over in
That was
Moscow.
yeah.
Had a crazy story, had to flee Moscow. And then went on and played in Poland the season after that. So definitely never got rich, but got rich in life experience, and
Yeah,
so it was
that
it was
sounds
cool.
really cool and everything. So how proficient are you in speaking the German language? Did you pick up some stuff when you were over there? Are you still kind of a fish out of water, or how are you getting the hang
Ich,
of it?
ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. I can speak a little bit. I can understand about, I don't know, 30% of a conversation. And I took a 100-hour class. So I'm getting there. My visa runs out, my first one in 3 years. And when that runs out, I have to take a proficiency test. So I've got to make strides, but I had a little bit of, football German is a little bit
Yeah.
different than like normal German because it's a blend. But I'm learning as much as I can, put it that
Yeah.
way for now.
Yeah, so what's it been like? I mean, you've always followed UCF
Yeah,
football since you graduated. It's a little bit of a different time schedule now that you're what, I
yeah,
think 6 hours different. So when there's a
yeah,
night game, that's pretty much middle of the night for you. So
yeah.
what's that been like? Have you ever been able to catch the games? And I guess do you have streaming or is there any ESPN over there, or how have you been following UCF?
So I use a handy dandy VPN and then act like my IP is in the US, and then I can still log into like Spectrum, or I have ESPN Plus, and yeah, I can watch a majority of the games. I mean, it's been great the 3:30 games we've had because that's 9:30 at night, and that's not a problem. The only game that I missed this year was ECU, and my head almost exploded when I woke up and saw that score. It was like Twitter had completely blown up, and so I tried to figure out what happened. And we all know there's a number of things that
Right.
have been rumored to have happened. But yeah, I get to see all of the games. I've got a little group now of guys that play for me on the Berlin Thunder that have kind of bought into the fandom of UCF, and we chat about the team and what's going on, and I try to provide insight where I can. But I've stayed as in touch as possible, and I certainly, if it's an 8 o'clock game, 2 a.m. just gets tough for the game to end at five
Yeah.
thirty in the morning. But otherwise, with our schedule this year, I've been lucky for the most part, especially as of late.
Yeah, so what's your involvement with the Berlin Thunder? I've seen a little bit on Facebook. Are you kind of in an
Mhm.
advisory role, or what's your role with Berlin?
I'm an offensive assistant. I would
Okay.
almost consider myself more as an advisor. I don't get too much into schematics or game planning, but I've always had a knack, and I think that's from my quarterback experience of coaching people and players. And that's where I fit in this year. Bjorn Werner, who many will remember, was a All-American at Florida State and 17th overall pick to the Colts in 2013. He's actually the owner of our team.
Okay.
So there's football is trending up. I've done it with the Thunder to continue to get out there. It's very unique. I wasn't going to coach high school football in Florida, and certainly the collegiate lifestyle is completely different. So this has been kind of this opportunity to coach again at what's a fairly competitive professional level over there. And you only practice 2 nights a week. You have a game on Sunday, so it doesn't take too much time. And
Right.
I've really, really enjoyed it. So I'll continue to do that moving forward. And we get about 7,000 people at games. So it's not bad. It's like a big high school football game. And I'm hoping that I can start to recruit some UCF guys
Yeah,
that
because
aren't
we
going
got
to the
Paul
next level.
Rubaut. Yeah, Paul
Yeah.
Rubaut's from Germany. He's on the team
Yep.
right now. He might be in line to start next season. We'll see. But I know American football is really growing over there.
It is. They had 1 million people in the waiting room on Ticketmaster when the tickets from Munich went on sale. They had over
But
3 million requests for the NFL Munich game.
wow,
So yeah, it's extremely popular and the second most televised sport in Germany and watched sport in Germany, even over Formula One and some other things. So
really?
there's a market for it. There's definitely
I
a market
I
for
know
it.
UCF is worldwide, but have you run into any UCF people or people that have recognized you over there, or that maybe haven't happened yet?
Only people that have traveled to Europe who have said, hey, I'm going to be in Berlin, and
Okay.
I've met up with Sean Barquette. He was
Yeah.
over in Berlin for a couple of days, so we hung out and I showed him around, and he's obviously as big of a fan as it gets. So it was nice seeing that familiar face. But there's a few actual UCF alum that are in Berlin. But nobody's recognizing me on the street for my time with
I guess
UCF.
you're
That's for
not
sure.
as famous as I thought,
No.
but yeah. So you were able to be in person though and see the Navy
Yeah.
game from the Cabana. From one, how do you like to field Cabana? How was that experience as a player? I know the view's a little different. I mean, you're used to field level, but sometimes when the action's way down the field, you kind of don't know what's happening. How did you like that experience?
I enjoyed it. It's you get away from seeing that size of athlete, right, on a regular basis, and it's cool to see it again, even as somebody that's been in the mix. Like it's a different perspective. I think it'd be amazing to be a little kid sitting down there and being so close. It's when the ball's going the other way, it's certainly a disadvantage. It's hard to tell if somebody ran for 4 yards or 12
Exactly.
yards. You kind of got to
No,
watch the
exactly.
referee. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a great addition to the stadium,
Yeah.
definitely.
So what did you think about that game itself? I mean, we all know what Navy does, and I knew going in it wouldn't be a cakewalk, even though they were 3-7. I mean, I'm not going to say I expected UCF to lose. Certainly didn't, but
No.
I mean, I wasn't shocked at what transpired because if the offense for some reason can't click, there's going to be limited possessions with how much Navy controls the clock. So, what was your perspective of someone who's played football and followed UCF? I mean, what did you think of last weekend?
Well, I thought Navy, played their perfect game, right? They controlled the ball for nearly 7 minutes or over 7 minutes on the first drive, went down
Yeah.
and scored. And you've got to answer, right? Because that deflates the crowd. And we didn't really have an answer. And I think we didn't have an answer in blitz pickup. I think we were still trying to throw the vertical passing game to some extent. But if you look the week before versus Notre Dame, the second half, which got Navy back into that game, they blitzed 7 guys, and you've got to have a tight end and a back helping in protection. And if you don't, you've got to throw hot routes and you've got to be accurate. And I think that our quarterback's accuracy, both of them was off to some extent, and we didn't get ourselves on the momentum side, other than the first drive of the
Right.
second half. But we really just fell right into the perfect game plan for Navy. And, we didn't stop Navy for 2 yards on 3rd and 6 when we needed to. They got to that 4th and 1 scenario quite often. And it's even with the size advantage on our side, they were able to convert first downs and chew up the clock. And if they get 39 or 40 minutes of time of possession in a game, it's going to be very difficult to beat them if you're not scoring on 30 or 40% of your drives. And then lastly, you've obviously got to score touchdowns inside the 10-yard line and not
Not
settle for
field
field
goals.
goals.
You're right.
And we didn't do that. And give it to credit to Navy. I mean, those guys have some of the best young men that America has to offer. They didn't give up. They were never going to quit. They were going to force you to beat them. And we didn't get it done.
Yeah, I know it sounds dramatic, but I honestly thought it might have been really one of the worst losses in UCF history
Yeah.
for what was on the line. But
Mhm.
now, maybe not so much because last night we saw UCF is still ranked, shockingly, number 22 in the college football playoff ranking. So with the crazy AAC tiebreakers that everyone was racking their brain trying to figure out a few days ago, now it's pretty simple because UCF is ranked in that poll. And if they win on Saturday in the War on I-4 against USF, they are in the conference championship game. So it's really a chance of redemption for players and coaches. And I'm sure they feel horrible for letting that game slip away. But I mean, the only thing now is they're not going to host. They'd have to go on the road
Yeah.
to Tulane or Cincinnati. So maybe the loss isn't quite as bad as we thought it might have
Yeah.
been a few days ago. But that this Saturday, that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you a little bit. War on
Yeah.
I-4, longtime rivalry with South Florida. This is going to be the final year, at least for the time being. And you were there in those very first matchups that began in
Yeah.
2005. I think that was your second year at
Mhm.
UCF. I know your teams never beat South
No.
Florida, but just what are your initial thoughts when you think about that? You're a young player and this series is starting. I remember it was in '05, and that's when UCF was still in that losing streak. I
Yeah.
think that might have been the last game they lost because I think Marshall might have been the following week, which snapped the streak. But what are
Yeah.
your early memories, and did you recognize it was a rivalry, and did you recognize how heated it would be?
Well, for me, it was really exciting because Coach O'Leary always recruited me on building a foundation, and I'll kind of circle back to that because I think we've accomplished what we were trying to do back then. But I grew up an Alabama fan, and Alabama Auburn is always this huge in-state rivalry every year, and I was excited about what the potential could be in a game like this, in a rivalry like this. And I think we've had some cool marketing over the years. The War on I-4 has basically stuck, right? And it was always a game to get excited for. And so I think that we've come out the other side in the rivalry on the winning side, luckily. But you can go back to what I would consider some of the biggest games in the last 20 years for UCF, notably 2017, when I think South Florida may have been 9-2. And with the dramatic way that we won
Yeah.
that game, it really sticks out. So I've enjoyed it. I hate to see it go. I really do. I don't take the approach that South Florida took with Judy Genshaft and some of them and
Yeah.
said, we don't want to play you. You're not on our level. I don't feel that way. I would love to find a way to keep the game, the rivalry going, if at all possible, because I think it's, despite how a season goes for either team, at the end of the year, you're going to have this game that everybody, including the fans, can get excited about. And so, yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but has been fun along the way.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on those comments. But let's talk a little bit about 2007 because I just mentioned
Yeah.
Navy was one of the might have been it
Yeah.
felt like one of the worst losses maybe with what was on the line. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of UCF fans, that 2007 game in
Mhm.
Tampa, the 64-12,
Yeah.
that ranks as really one of the most crushing losses. I mean, in the grand scheme of things now, it's just more like an interesting footnote because where UCF is going, you know, basically leaving South Florida behind, the conference championships that followed beyond that. But in that moment, that felt like just such a punch in the gut. And I know
Mhm.
offensively, you guys couldn't get anything going that day.
Oh,
The crowd was nasty. USF basically ran the score up. They didn't have to. They tacked on some late touchdowns. And I think I refresh my memory. I think you heard it from the fans. Wasn't that the game that you were out to dinner at the Ale House? And you
yeah.
had a fan come up to you upset. Can you kind of tell us about that
Yeah.
game and maybe that experience? Because that maybe more than anything showed you how people got up for this game.
Well, I think that in that game, I remember running out of the tunnel. I'm pretty sure it was a noon kickoff, and things just felt weird. And from a team chemistry perspective, even from my own perspective, I kind of felt like I was in this haze, right? This fog, and that's exactly what happened on the field. And I know you're going to have Matt Grothe on after me or with me on this podcast, and I was going to be complimentary to him because he was truly remarkable, not only in his career at South Florida. Obviously UCF fans hate him. he's stirred the pot, let's say, along the way, but he was a very good college football player, and he played probably the best game he ever played that day. So it was difficult, and I got some quick exposure to how important that game was to UCF fans. I had some people come up to me and make some threatening comments at Ale House. I had a death threat on my car. Not
I
sure how
remember that
somebody figured
now.
out where I live.
Yeah, I remember you
but
telling me about that. And I kind of forgot about it. I remember
yeah,
they left a note under your windshield. Is
yeah,
that what happened?
telling me that I should kill myself or they will. And so had my back left tire slashed, and all after that game. And I think what
That was
sticks
like
out,
in the
yeah,
days after. That was just the
yeah,
immediate
that was
aftermath.
the week after that game. And again, I had some more of that type of experience after the Mississippi State loss as well in the Liberty Bowl. So yeah, I realized pretty quickly that our fan base was
It
starting to
doesn't
become a big time college fan base.
that doesn't excuse what they did, but I guess
No.
it sort of shows that as well. So yeah, you were at the ale house with your family, and you had a
Yeah,
fan kind of
guy
get in your face.
guy approached me. I'd be lying if I told you I can remember verbatim, but was very upset. May have been a little bit inebriated, but was making
Probably.
it clear that they weren't pleased with the outcome of the game and was aggressive. Yeah, truly aggressive to the point where I don't know if my dad said something, but it got de-escalated pretty quickly. I wasn't a small guy, so
Yeah.
I was ready to get up and defend myself. But what I will say, and I think this is an important part of the story for where that season went afterwards. I think we won like 7 straight games or something like that. When we got back to the facility on those buses, Coach O'Leary called a team meeting, and brought us in to the team meeting room and really spent about 30 or 40 minutes kind of reframing where we should go the rest of the way, and really helping us in his unique way of bearing and putting that loss behind us. And then brought me into his office afterwards and kind of asked what I thought happened. And, in an uncommon way, he said, listen, you've got to play with some fun. You need to have fun. You need to really kind of relax and not worry about me and the pressure that you may be feeling from me. And that changed the rest of the season for me. I was never going to be a guy that went out and threw for 350 yards. We didn't run that type of offense, but I felt more confident than I ever had before. And it was how he handled immediately us kind of putting that loss behind us. And so I thought that was a great coaching moment for him, and especially in my career for him to handle it that way.
And it was an interesting crossroads because we're talking about 64-12, and I think USF went on to be ranked number 2 maybe a couple weeks later, and then everything completely fell apart for South Florida. Didn't
Yep.
even I don't think even finish the year ranked. They lost their
Ranked.
bowl game. UCF, on the other hand, had that amazing run, all the way to the Liberty Bowl, the conference championship, and just look at the trajectory of both programs ever since that for such a terrible end result of that one day in Tampa. I mean, the I guess both programs where both programs headed couldn't be any more different. But what was it like for you? Because that series took several years off because at that point, USF wanted nothing to do with UCF. They didn't want to schedule any games. And I think those initial games were only scheduled because it was part of an agreement. When USF left Conference USA, they had to play another Conference USA team. It was something in their exit agreement. And so when that was finished, they didn't want to play anymore. And the two teams didn't play again until they were forced to, when both ended up in the same conference, the American Athletic Conference. So what was it like for you as a former player at that point, an alumni coming back, to see UCF start to creep up and winning some games? 2013 was a really big one, that first game in the bounce house in years.
Yep.
And obviously that team, we know what happened that year. And once you mentioned 2017, so it hasn't been satisfying to see UCF claw back and start to notch some wins. And now they have a series lead, and they have to win on Saturday to maintain the series lead. But I mean, that had to have been satisfying for you, experience that 64-12 day in 2007.
No, it is, and that's the beauty about being a part of a program, right? You're a part of it forever, and so people can go out and maybe make up or get some vengeance for certainly for the loss that we had, because it was truly, it was the worst day of football that I've ever experienced. If you weren't at that game, it's hard to tell what that was like. It was terrible. So to see what Blake did, I think we beat them in a close game in 2013, fairly close. I think he hit Brashard Perryman or somebody on a
Yeah,
deep
that was
pass
the,
down the
what the
left
interesting
side.
thing about the series though is that, other than 2017, both programs haven't really been at their peak when they played each other. It's always been
Yeah.
UCF is really good and USF's really bad. Even the years that USF is bad and UCF should have dominated, the games are always closer than they should have been. Like that 2013 game, honestly, probably should have been a blowout. I know UCF didn't really, they made every game interesting that year. They won them, but unfortunately for UCF fans, they haven't had that 64-12 type game, to get back at them
No.
to kind of really feel like they ran all over them.
I think, Brandon, that this could be the game. I mean, we got to play the type of football that we played against Cincinnati, Memphis, and Tulane. But I would love to see us dominate a game where we see another 350-yard rushing game or something like that, and kind of put it to bed, get out on top with the series lead. This game puts us in a conference championship. I think it would be icing on the cake. I don't have this true internal hatred of South Florida, because you're always kind of wanting them in some way, shape, or form, at least me, to do well, to make this game at the end of the year even bigger than it already is. And I played football in high school with guys that played at South Florida, and you're always, for me, I had a strong hatred for East Carolina. And I didn't necessarily feel that way about South Florida, but it's been satisfying, to say the least, to see us do what we've done to them. Because I don't really remember that feeling of losing to them too much. And I guarantee you that I'll wake up on Sunday getting back on a flight to Germany and be terribly disappointed, gut wrenchingly disappointed, if we were to lose this game. And their head coach and that team knows what they're playing for. They're not playing just to beat us, but they're playing to
Right.
ruin our season. And so they're going to come out motivated, and they've been in some close football games that they just haven't won.
Right. And you had mentioned a few minutes ago that, you were really brought in to help build the foundation. Coach
Yeah.
Ely talked about that when he recruited you, and you definitely did that. So how proud are you when you look back at what you did, and you see how this program has grown through the years? You see the New Year's Six Bowl wins, you see the Fiesta Bowl, you see the the undefeated season, the national championship in 2017, and now you see UCF going to a Power Five conference, the Big 12. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
UCF always dreamed of. They wanted to get in the Big East before, when that was still a BCS league. USF did everything they could to block that from happening, and now you
Yeah.
see what's happening when UCF's going alone. They're not going to be linked with South Florida anymore. So as someone who's been there, I mean, just how excited are you for the future? We see where UCF is headed.
Extremely excited. Extremely excited. Slightly disappointed that I've waited so many years for us to be in the Big 12, and I make it to catch one football game a year now, in person. That's a little disappointing. But when you look at the success, 2013, when you look at how we rebounded from a terrible season in 2015 to 2 years later with basically half the same team go undefeated, and then to beat Auburn the way that we did. And I think when you look at the caliber of player that we're bringing into the program now, you're seeing guys go have an impact and change their lives financially at the next level. And that's something that each time a player gets drafted, I do have this moment of satisfaction knowing that, like, I helped play a small part of putting our program in position to get this type of player, and for them to get this next level of success. Even to see a guy like Josh Sitton go into the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, who was a right tackle with me, it is satisfying, and it is something that, Coach O'Leary made this promise that, hey, you're going to come back someday, and you're going to open a stadium in 10 years. Thanks to him and Steve Orsini, we got it done in my career. But just to even on Saturday, I probably had 20 seconds where I looked around and just appreciated, for an 11 o'clock game, we had a pretty full stadium, and we're in the top 25, and the expectation has changed, and so it's been rewarding. It's what we as a team and program set out to do. It's why I chose UCF over a Florida State or some of these other schools that I could have gone to, was because there's something to be said about being a part of building something. And we accomplished what we wanted to do. And there were guys before us, Brandon, you know it, that are still around that in the 80s and 90s
Right.
feel the same way. And so, yeah, that's something that can never be taken away. You can't take away a conference championship from us. And I'm just glad that we've continued to have the impact, on a national level that the program has had. And now if I wear a UCF hat in another state, so somebody knows what that means. And for a long time, they had no UCF. Where is that?
California
That's changed.
Fresno, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's changed.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
That's
I've really
good.
enjoyed catching up with you these last few minutes. Congratulations of
Likewise.
all the great stuff going on in your life, and
Thank you.
you have a safe flight back to Germany. It was great to see you in person last
Yeah,
weekend,
enjoyed
and
it.
I thought it'd be fun. I thought the fan base would like to hear from you a little bit. I know you've done very immediate stuff through the years, but you kind of have a unique perspective as we kind of get ready for this final installment of the War on I-4. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, and maybe we'll chat again sometime in the future.
Let me know. Would love to. Go Knights.
All right, charge on.
Let's go.